Season 25, Episode 17, Brick Like Me. I didn't really like the Lego Movie that much. I didn't like this episode that much. I feel like that's the only thing I'd have to say about this entire fucking thing. I really do. I didn't like the Lego Movie that much because I felt like after a while, if I went back to go and watch it, if I saw it again, and I have watched it since I saw it in the cinema, it wasn't going to be as entertaining. And it wasn't going to be as entertaining because the jokes just wouldn't be as funny, and it wouldn't have that same effect. It wasn't good comedy, it was just good, like, one-off jokes. And that's kind of how this episode strikes me. It's not good comedy. It's good one-off jokes. So basically, as I said on a previous episode, it does seem like the Simpsons has moved to just jamming in as many references as they can to try and seem like they are still with the popular culture. And that's pretty much what this episode is. It's the Lego Movie came out, so the Simpsons went, oh, we should do something similar, which is just copy the Lego Movie, which they do reference at the end, but try to play it off as if they didn't. Which, it's that issue, once again, where you can try to sort of like deflect, try and lampshade it, but if you're purposefully lampshading it and trying to sort of like, oh no, it's totally different, everyone sees through that because they know it's not the same. And here's the actual issue I have with this episode. The issue I have with this episode. It's trying to be two separate stories. It's trying to be two separate themes. It achieves neither of them, for me, at least. One story is it's trying to be that Homer and Lisa are meant to, Homer's trying to gain this sort of bond with Lisa. It breaks. Homer does too. The other theme is, oh look, we have this Lego set of The Simpsons that's coming out. Look at all this weird and wonderfulness you could be with it. It doesn't do that either. And the reason it doesn't do it is because it devotes too much time to one side than it does the other, but it doesn't give the resolution very well for one side, and the other one doesn't really feel like it comes off that well. The episode basically has Homer wakes up and he is in a Lego world, and they have all the sort of the general ridiculousness that it is. And give them credit, they do try and do some stuff with it and sort of try and reference the fact that they did Lego and it's all the stuff that they can do. And I wish they'd stuck with that. I wish they'd taken it further, and they do towards the end, but I kind of wish that it hadn't felt so much like a basic Simpsons episode, just with a gimmick, with a visual gimmick, because that was what I think was the issue. It's just that if you're going to do something insane and weird and something that really should stand out, have it stand out. Don't have it be, oh, we're going to do this gimmick, but we're just going to use the same old plot that we would use for any other episode. You have a gimmick. Use the gimmick to its fullest. You have the ability to have stupid and ridiculously funny things happen, and some of them are. There's some solid jokes in there. Not always, but solid. And they just don't do it. They sort of bring it up, and then they get too bogged down in the whole thing of like, oh, this is all Homer's fantasy because of stuff that happens. Like, oh, well, who cares? We've seen this sort of situation before where Homer's had this fantasy sort of situation, and made the rest of it. The episode that makes me think of it is I can't remember the actual long name, but it's The Mysterious Voyage of Homer. It's the one where he eats the ghost chilies, and he pours the wax on his tongue to be able to do it, and then he has that whole vision quest. And that, I think, is really good, because that whole section of it is then very ridiculous and silly, and it's very over the top, and it works. This never felt over the top. It got towards that at the end, and I'll get to that, but it just didn't pull off correctly. So basically, Homer goes to buy a present for Lisa for her birthday, and it's this fairly stereotypical pink princess. That it's literally Princess Patty's Pretty Patty's Pink Princess Shop. I think that's what it was. In fact, I can remember that. It's quite impressive, I think, to me. And basically, Homer realizes that, oh no, wait, this world might not actually be real, because he gets visions of having these situation, and he sees in the real world how he and Lisa were bonding over Lego, which is, it's perfectly fine. And then he continues on. He keeps seeing that he is more, he is seeing the real world more and more. He's seeing himself as he actually is, the Lego version. And he keeps building, and then he gets the sort of understanding. He realizes they keep using the same phrase where everything fits together and nobody gets hurt. And they keep using that, which I think is clever. It's a good, solid way. It's something that gets brought up in there. Is the real world before the Lego world, and so it's continuously used. It's a thematic purpose that works nicely. And it continues, and basically Homer is beginning to bond with Lisa, as they have done in previous episodes, but then Lisa suddenly falls in with a group of older kids because they're reading what is essentially the Hunger Games. And this is what I mean once again by the Simpsons will reference as many things as possible and jam it down your throat that I've said in other videos. Which is the fact there's the Lego movie reference, there's the Hunger Games reference, there's a couple of stuff, but that's very major. And it seems really weird for Lisa, who is a fairly empathetic character, to basically be like, oh, these people are my friends now who I've only known for about a day. I'm going to leave them alone, and I'm going to leave Homer alone to go and spend time with them. And then she basically, at the end of the episode, decides, oh no, she's not going to do that. So what's the point? She didn't learn anything because we never saw that mentality. We never saw how she got to that point. I don't understand why you couldn't have had Lisa try to bond with Homer then over the books, the Hunger Game, the survival games. And so Homer goes to this Lego building competition and ends up getting knocked out. And that's where that's how he's ended up in this fantasy world. And then basically, in a very similar way, he then realizes, oh, I'm in this fantasy world. I will never have any of these problems. So he's perfectly happy to stay there. And he begins to, but then he begins just talking and he realizes all the stuff that he will miss out because he's in this fantasy world. And this is the sort of thing that bugs me, is that they're so quick to turn on the dime on this. Like, they could have had that happen early on and him enjoying it, but then him begin to realize and begin to build and get to him that the world is never going to change. Everything is going to stay the same forever. And I don't know why they didn't do that. I don't know why they didn't make more of a deal of you can't live. Because the point of the episode, the point at least of that storyline, is that you can't live in a fantasy world. You have to face reality at some point, and part of facing reality is growing up. It's getting older. It's the changes that come with time and other people. And they could have really gone for that. They could have dissected that and talked about it and brought it up into a really good, interesting episode. But they don't, because it's too quick. Homer's heel turn to suddenly go from, oh, I like my fantasy world, to, oh, I don't like my fantasy world, is about 2 minutes. That's about the time between him saying, oh, this is great, and oh, this is terrible. Then you just have, Lisa come back at the end and she apologizes for having left Homer, and it's just kind of hollow because, like, well, you left him for a fairly sparse reasoning. You come back for about the same. We've had everything is so focused on Homer, we don't get that opposite side, so we don't get that confliction that she would surely have faced, where she'd have gone, oh, well, these people are my friends, but Homer is my father, and thus there's, that sense of responsibility, that sense of, like, growing up and maybe moving a bit further away from hanging out with your parents, to that relationship between a father and his daughter. I would have loved to see, because they do this towards the end, like Bart, basically his subplot, which I'm glad they only had 2 subplots. They had the focus of Homer and Lisa, which is perfectly fine, and they had the Barts in Homer's fantasy world has to rebuild the school after breaking the school. And for some reason then has to build multiple versions of it. They don't really explain that. I don't know why. But it's all about Bart not doing what he feels like he should do against Bart doing what the instructions tells him to do. And I like that idea. I like the idea of saying, well, yeah, sometimes there are the times to follow the instructions, and sometimes it's the time to do what you choose to do. And I don't know, and that felt like something they could explore more. And towards the end of the episode, Bart appears in this giant sort of robot where it's this mishmash of things, which immediately makes me go, isn't that what they did in the Lego Movie? Yes, that's what they did in the Lego Movie. we're referencing it heavily. It's not good. And thus, that's interesting. And I would have kind of liked to see that maybe. I would have liked to see that they could have focused on that more. And they could have had it where Bart was trying to focus in that sort of like trying to do instructions, but his imagination was kind of getting free and it was building little bits and pieces, and that he was trying to repress it to do this thing, but he couldn't, because that's interesting in a way. It's they've done it before, this idea of like expression, and that you can't restrict it. You shouldn't restrict it. You shouldn't expect people to follow things so specifically, because people have different ways of doing things. Imagination is useful. It's good. The fact that it does, they were trying to bring up that sort of social commentary, which is good, because that's what Simpsons should do. That schools do tend to try and stamp that out sometimes with imagination. They don't, there's become this thing where we want people to do exactly as we expect and not change anything, not raise the bar, not rock the boat in that sort of regard. And that's what that side of the episode is about. And it's good. But it's very quick. It doesn't really build upon it. They do have a little bit of stuff. It's like Bart decides to change the school around to as he thinks it should be, and he uses Ralph as part of a wall. Just like, okay. And that's once again one of those points where I was saying about the gimmick of the episode. Uses that fact that it's Lego, but other than bits and pieces elsewhere, they don't do much with it. I would say this episode's better. It didn't annoy me as much as other episodes have, but it's just not. It still just doesn't feel like The Simpsons at that point. It still just feels like that heart of it isn't there, because they are repeating themselves and they don't seem to have pulled together the like. This is the message we're going for. This is this is social commentary. Like the original stuff did, and I think that's the problem. It's that they need to look at, if they're going to tell a story, if they're going to tell this point, then tell the point. The idea of imagination against restriction, against rules, that could have been really good for that episode, that gimmick, for the Lego section. And I don't know why not. Why they didn't just do that. Why they didn't just go, let's just tell this one story. There's no need to tell both stories, because the second story was just, and they call it out in the episode, so it shows it. The Homer story is just the Legos movie story. It's learning about parenting using the Lego. I still really didn't like that in the Lego movie that much. I sometimes wonder if that I should do as a review for the Lego movie, but I need to buy it and look at it again and maybe figure that out. It's funny that I can watch the episode and be less annoyed, because I can see what they're trying to do, and it does feel a lot like the older Simpsons, but it's not enough. It's not focused. It's a very scattered, sort of absent-minded sort of way of storytelling. It's that they don't bring it together. They don't put it together and say, this is the one story we're trying to tell, and then we're going to tell these other little bits. That's the thing. I actually think that the Homer and Lisa bonding, maybe over stuff like Lego, like the Hunger Games sort of stuff that, kids like now. Because, I'm a 24-year-old. I don't really know exactly what kids like, other than maybe the occasional TV show, other than that. And that could have been an episode in itself. And then you could have had the Lego episode be this whole thing of imagination against strict rules. I don't know why they didn't do that. And I'm disappointed to see that they didn't do that, because that would have been fun. That would have been enjoyable. And I am more than sure that I've repeated myself countless times, but that's kind of the point of talking about these things. I would have liked to have seen some of the other characters as well in this episode. That was the thing, we see Krusty briefly, and that's good, and you get comic book guys, the sort of the villain, so that's fine. But it would have been, it's once again that thing of I liked seeing the other characters, and given they've got this whole kind of crazy world, they could have built up that a bit more. You get the church scene, which has lots of other characters. You get Flanders there, but and you get Reverend Lovejoy as well, who's reading this version of the Bible that's entirely told as if it was it was the religion. But I would have liked to have seen more, and that's where I think the imagination thing would have been more interesting, because you could have done that episode. you could have had that as like a big town episode. Like, they're so focused on just staying in the sort of like the rules of the plays that it's not that fun, not interesting. Despite the fact that with Lego you can kind of build anything you want, and that's what really I feel like it should have been. It did feel like very Jesus Christ to me. Did this feel like it felt like they were just trying to sell the toys, like the Lego Simpsons stuff that I know came out the same time that this episode played. I know it did because I remember seeing it, and that annoys me no end because that is blatant. That is like the 70s and 80s cartoon series where they had it so it was like, oh look, this new character introduced, and did you know you could buy the toy? And it's like, really? Are we really doing that? Are we really immediately selling toys to kids through The Simpsons? I just don't know. It's insane. It really is. It's just not the way they should be doing it, and it doesn't come across like charming or anything like that. It comes across so blatantly. That's a bad taste when you see it, and it's just like, I know you're trying to get me to buy these things, and I probably would, but I am a fan of the. I'm a major fan of The Simpsons. Where I want to start doing this stuff, but if I'm being pandered to, if the show is pandering to me in such a way of like, oh, look at all these sets that you could possibly buy. Did you know you could buy the comic book shop and comic book guy? Did you know you could build the Simpsons house and the Springfield Elementary and stuff like that? It comes across far too hollow and far too superficial. Whereas if they had done the episode where it was very sort of imagination based thing against the rules, I think that would have actually been better to try and sell people the toys, which I know sounds a bit strange for me to say. But it's mainly because they could have easily said, oh, look, you can buy these things, but you don't have to put them together the way we say you do. You can do whatever you like. And that is a more interesting thing. When you think about it, that's also actually it's the plot line it's the message of the Lego movie. So maybe that's why they didn't do it. Because it's very similar. But they're stealing everything else from the Lego movie in sort of terms of theme and design. So fuck it. Why not the message as well? Screw it. Who cares at that point? You're going to call out the fact that you're basically taking from the plotline of the Lego movie. Might as well go in wholeheartedly. It's an okay episode. It's better than some of the others. The plotline is there, but it doesn't really feel like it has much pathos and gravitas. It doesn't feel like it has any meat to it because it's so very by the books. There's not so much in the sort of the mentality of other people, and it feels far more like you're being told it than shown it, which I think is the thing that kind of bugs me. It doesn't feel like, you can see what the character's going through and you get the mentality. It just feels like they say, oh, Homer is sad because he can't be friends with Lisa anymore. Thus this. Instead of you going, oh, Homer is sad. Oh, but now he realizes he can't be friends with Lisa anymore. It's not that, it's the emotion to it. It doesn't feel like it's an episode that's trying to draw the emotion out of you. It feels more like it's an episode that just goes, here is what you should be feeling. It's like Call of Duty, the Call of Duty game recently that had the press X to feel. I can't remember if it was press X to feel. I can't remember what it was. But it's at this funeral and you go up to like the coffin and it's press X to something and I can't remember, and there was so many jokes about it. But that's what it is. It's that moment of you are not being made to feel the way, you are just being given the way you should be feeling. It just doesn't work. So that is actually episode 3. That's the third one of these I've done now, and that's all the ones I've got so far. I will probably set record later for some more, and the sun is actually coming in a lot more at the moment, which is partly why I got my hat on. Just by the fact I pulled that curtain closed. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed these so far. I don't know when this episode will be released. Probably will be till sometime the week after I release the first one. But I will see you again soon to talk about more of these Simpsons episodes, and hope you've enjoyed.